Hello girls, hope you're all doing well. I'm sorry this is so late, but here I am with your how to not be afraid of eating more calories video. So this is quite simple. Now, generally, the thing that kind of worries people the most about eating more food is when they suddenly start eating more food and they're in a calorie deficit, right? So what I've done is I've done this helpful spectrum, and now the best way to view calories is as a spectrum, right? And that spectrum can be broken up into three different parts. You have a calorie deficit, your maintenance calories, and then a surplus. Now, really, the surplus sort of calories, is infinite. It can go forever. Whereas your sort of your maintenance and your calorie deficit phases are sort of a little bit more restricted in terms of like their boundaries, like where they start and end. But your maintenance sort of calories are still a spectrum, but again, there's a smaller window really. But they're a spectrum really because, you might be more active on one day and therefore you would need more calories to maintain your weight, and you might be less active on one day and therefore you'd need less calories to maintain your weight, if that makes sense. But we'll start at the calorie deficit end of the spectrum. So you've got 0 calories here, which is obviously nothing. Let's say I've worked this out based on what my sort of like details are, like my maintenance and my BMR. So let's say you're at the arse end of your diet, you're on pretty much your BMR calories, or you're going for quite a rapid fat loss phase and you're on your BMR calories. So let's say you're here, right? And you decide that you no longer want to be in a calorie deficit. You're done with losing weight. You're starting to find the sort of dieting process quite tedious and harmful, and you've got, really bad cravings, and you're very food focused, and you've got food guilt and all these like negative, symptoms of dieting for a long time. So, you need to eat more calories, but you're scared that obviously having been in this calorie deficit, that eating more calories is going to mean that you gain fat. But ultimately, you've got a really long way to go along the calorie deficit spectrum before, you even hit sort of maintenance. And generally what will happen, let's say you start to reverse diet, and that's basically, you start eating more food, and you're increased to 650 calories. So that's, if we plot that, I'm going to plot it with a little burger. Right. So let's say the first increase is up to 1650 calories, right? It's only 150 calories a day, but it's still a calorie deficit. You're still within this sort of calorie deficit, umbrella, right? And then the next plot, let's say you, and this is how a reverse diet works, by the way. So you would increase in small increments, a little at a time over a period of weeks until you get up to maintenance. And the reason for that is basically if you went from 1500 to 2200, your body just wouldn't be able to cope with it, right? It just, you would be more likely to gain unnecessary fat then, just because of the psychological impact of, that massive jump. But also, like, your metabolism is not prepared for that. Your digestion is not prepared for that. Like, your metabolism is used to metabolizing 1500 calories worth of food, to suddenly then, consistently be going up to 2200, like the massive jump, with no preparation, and then you've just stayed there, your metabolism would really struggle to upregulate to there. Whereas if you did it incrementally, it gives your metabolism a chance to upregulate with your steady increase in food. Now, I know some of you have like high calorie days and low calorie days, and you're thinking, oh my god, but I have like 2200 calories, and then my metabolism is maybe used to eating 1500 calories. The difference is you're doing that for 2 days or maybe 1 day a week. You're not doing that consistently. So therefore, by the time your metabolism has upregulated a little bit, and let's say your metabolism is a hot dog, right? By the time your metabolism has upregulated to the point where it might start to be able to think about metabolizing this much food. Let's say it's here, and then you suddenly, eat 2,000 calories on Friday night, and then eat 2,000 calories on Saturday night. Your metabolism is really only going to be sort of around here. It's not going to quite catch up to this. So it's still upregulated. It's still going to be working at a faster rate, but it's not going to be quite here. And what happens if you make this massive jump is that your metabolism will basically go like this. And then go back down again. So what you want really is incremental increases so that your metabolism can keep up with the incremental increases, right? So by the time you get to here, your metabolism is also here, right? And your body, your digestive function, your brain, like all of the psychological side of things, your whole body is used to eating that much food, right? So you'd have these little incremental increases week by week, and so let's say we've done 1650, we're now doing 1750, on the second week, and then we're doing 1850, and then we're doing 1950, right? Because this is still a calorie deficit, the likelihood of you still continuing to lose body fat at this point is very, very high, and even more so because with the metabolism, your metabolism is working at a faster rate. You're going to have more energy doing your training sessions. You're going to be able to sleep better. You're going to be more motivated, and therefore your general nutritional and training adherence, because we all know what it's like, you have a day where you're like, oh my god, I'm going to have more food. You're way more excited to track. You're way more likely to kind of, stick to things. So you are going to continue losing weight, losing body fat whilst you're doing your reverse diet, and actually the speed at which that happens is going to be a lot quicker than if you kept going this way down, right? Because your body is able to function at a higher rate. Everything is functioning better, sleep, energy, like all of these things that have a massive impact on fat loss. All of your physiological, biological and psychological mechanisms are working as they should be, because ultimately by the time you get to your maintenance calories, this is where your body functions best, right? That's why that's why you should, naturally we should all be eating this much food, because this is the sweet spot where your whole body functions. This is the sweet spot for your sleep, your stress levels, your mental health, your well-being, your motivation, all of these things. As soon as you start going down, let's find a smiley face. Imagine this is like your bodily functions, right? This is like the ultimate happiness here, right? And then as you start going down, unfortunately, that is the side effect of dieting. Your bodily functions, because you're starving your body of the nutrients that it needs, your bodily functions go down. As soon as you start going into the calorie surplus side of things, you've got more energy, that's all good. And then eventually it's too much for your body to deal with, and therefore your body starts storing fat. You're going to feel sluggish, you're going to feel a bit gross about yourself, you might get spots. Like this is where, and these are unfortunately the things that you have to generally deal with, when you do gain muscle, if you're in a bulking phase and on really high calories for a long period of time, your digestion starts to suffer a little bit because it's struggling to cope with all the food. And this is very extreme, right? This is, what it's like as a bodybuilder, not as a general person. Your body starts to struggle digesting the food. You're never hungry. You just feel gross and sluggish and slow and just a little bit blah, right? So this is sort of like the prime time. But as I said, you've been slowly increasing your food, but you are still in a calorie deficit. So you've still got the capabilities of losing fat. And actually, sometimes, as I mentioned, in your reverse diet phase, this is actually where you make, really quick progress, same sort of rate of progress in the first week of your, diet, when you've gone from maintenance to your first sort of jump of a calorie deficit, and, you drop weight quite quickly. The same sort of effect happens, right? Some people call it the whoosh effect. It's the whoosh effect is an interesting, bit of an interesting debated thing. It's basically to do with like energy levels and water in body, and again how your body metabolizes and stores water and stuff like that. So yeah, so basically that's the premise of increasing food, and that's why let's say you go over your calories by 150 calories and you're on 15 calories. It's still a deficit, right? And that's why we say things like, if you had a couple of days around 1,500 calories and then you went up to 2,200 calories, which always sounds quite scary, I think. But if you remember, for a lot of you that have high calorie days and low calorie days, 2,000 calories is actually still probably a deficit for you. Even though it just sounds like a lot of food, and it's, a massive jump from, where you've been at. And it's actually that jump that always sounds a lot scarier than it actually is. But yeah, with increasing food, you do it incrementally, you do it slowly, but the main thing is you realise you're actually still in a calorie deficit. So you've still got capability for your weight and your body fat levels to be coming down. But then you hit this part here, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time to actually work out what, your whole, what your maintenance calories actually are. You may go up, actually your weight comes up a little bit too quickly, so you can go back down again. But this sort of phase here, this maintenance phase here, your weight will not change. Your body fat percentage will not change. The only thing that will change is how your body functions, and again, it will change in a positive way. Everything, this is the amount of food that your body requires to operate, as on an average, optimum, best sort of performance, right? So that's, I always find that's quite a nice way of rationalizing how not to be scared of eating more food. You have generally got a long way to go before you would even start to, gain weight. And we know that, if you gain a little bit of weight, after 150 calorie increase in a reverse diet, the likelihood of that coming down again quite quickly is quite high. But also we know that if it's happened overnight, it's going to be water weight because you're eating more carbohydrates, right? And when we increase calories, that's generally where we would add the food. We would add it to fats and carbohydrates. The protein would stay the same. So fats and carbohydrates. So, if you're eating more carbs, your weight may fluctuate a little bit, but as long as the average is kind of staying the same, or, it may even go down, that's where, it's, that's why that would sort of happen. The other thing you've got to remember is, obviously we know that this surplus phase is the most optimal for growing muscle. That isn't to say that it's impossible to grow muscle in these two phases. As a lot of you will know, we have weeks where our weight doesn't really change, or a month where our weight doesn't really change, but physically we look a lot different. And that might be because there has been some muscle growth. So what you also have to factor in here is that, if your weight does change, it's not the end of the world. It's just that your body has more energy, and therefore you are increasing your capability of muscle growth along this track as you get to around here. As soon as you get into this bit here, that's where you really would, providing you're training hard, that's where you really would be growing muscle. But it's not impossible to grow muscle, in this calorie deficit phase and in this maintenance phase. So, that's another thing you'd have to factor in. Muscle obviously weighs more than fat. As long as measurements were coming down still, pictures were still looking leaner, if your weight did fluctuate a little bit, it wouldn't necessarily be the end of the world, because again, you're still a calorie deficit. You're still primed for losing fat. It's just that your body is like, oh, well, maybe I have a little bit more energy to grow muscle, right? Or a little bit more energy to work a little bit harder in my sessions, push a little bit harder. So that's generally my way of kind of rationalizing how not to be afraid of eating more food. Either, if we're reverse dieting, or if you have a day where you might be, going over your calories by 200-300 calories. If we go from here to here, that's 700 calories really jump. And even if we went up to 2,200 calories, that's still a maintenance. That's still your body weight staying the same, And even if you went into 2,300 calories for a day, it's just one day, you went back down to 1,500 calories. As soon as you add up, your weekly totals, for the, your calories for the week, if the average is still sort of falling in this calorie deficit range, you're still going to be losing body fat, right? Obviously, the lower down the calorie deficit range, the quicker you lose body fat, and the higher up you go, the slower it's going to be. But this is, the sacrifice you have to make for slower fat loss progress if you're around this end of the spectrum, calorie deficit spectrum, is it's more enjoyable, you have more energy, it's easier to adhere to everything, it's easier to be motivated, you've got more energy to train, your sleep is better. The further you go down this line, the harder everything gets, as we said with the little bodily functions thing. So yeah, I hope that's helped. I hope that's kind of made sense with like rationalizing it, and like having the science there to kind of not stress about potentially eating more food on a daily or weekly basis, depending on where you are with your goals.